Anne Sherry, thanks very much for talking to Business Spectator. I'm talking to you today, of course, as the head of Carnival Australia, which is it is the world's largest cruising company, and you have brands Cunard and P&O, etc. But originally you were in Westpac, of course, and known to many people, head of the Bank of Melbourne at one stage, which is now revived, and head of Bank of New Zealand. As a banker, your numeracy, if you like, and your ability to look at figures, what did you see in the statistics of cruising that made a difference to you in making that decision one time?
Well, I saw a business in Australia in particular that needed revitalising. So we'd had a lot of brand damage in the market, you know, and really we just flopped along for 70, 80 years in this market, doing okay, but largely just one ship. And I looked then overseas, and I went and talked to some of the people I now work for in the US, and you know, in the US it was such a different story. Everyone was doing it, and I guess it begged the question, why couldn't we do that here? Why couldn't we turn it into a really important part of Australia's tourism offering, both for local Australian and New Zealand tourists, but also to bring people from the US and Europe to Australia to travel by sea.
So how many people travel by sea? How many people go on a cruise in Australia each year?
Well, it's grown very dramatically, so 500,000 this year, 500,000 people, and we have an objective of getting to 1 million. So by 2020, I think there will be, and perhaps even earlier, I think there'll be 1 million people a year cruising in Australia.
Well, it's an extraordinary figure. How on earth did it get to 500,000? I mean, statistically, it's like 1 in 40 people from Australia are going on a cruise every year. Why is it so popular?
Well, it's a couple of things. We invested in the ships themselves, so the product is really very good and very contemporary. We've got Luke Mangan restaurants on the P&O ships, but all of the ships and all of the brands have got very contemporary product. It's all-inclusive price. So it's one of those holidays in tough times. If you're looking for value for money, this is a great way to travel.
But you can't, I would say you can't keep that sort of momentum up, but a growth rate of 27% now certainly can't be kept a secret. And there are cruise companies from all around the world now coming into Australia, aren't there? So how do you face that challenge, that you have had a success and that is now obvious on a global basis? Overseas tourism markets are even flatter than our own, so of course the ships can come here quite easily. How do you deal with that?
Well, two ways. I mean, one is the home-ported ships, and we run all the home-ported ships, both Princess and P&O brands. The home-ported ships operate in Australian dollars. So that's actually a relatively risk-free holiday for Australians. You don't have to worry about currency arbitrage, even though the Australian dollar is strong at the moment.
But you'd never worry about it at the moment. You'd be worrying that you're missing an opportunity to go and spend your dollars.
Well, there's a second group of people who are, of course, travelling on our ships in other parts of the world as well. So that's grown very dramatically.
Is that actually the spur of growth that we're seeing?
No, it's the domestic that's the biggest spur. Both have grown, but it's the domestic that absolutely is the growth engine.
Most people would know that you were in banking and then in cruise ships, which would seem a jump. But even prior to that, you were a radiographer, right? Once upon a time?
Once upon a time, yeah.
But for people looking at your career and trying to emulate that career trajectory, if you like, in some fashion, and also that you're on boards, you're on the board of Wilson HTM and other leading organisations. What advice do you give to younger people now in the early stages of management, and how to have a career like you've had, because it's diverse? Was yours opportunistic? Is that the word? Is that the key word to understand the Anne Sherry career path?
Yep, probably. I think opportunistic is a good word to describe it. And also I've probably been seen to be taking risk. I'm not sure I've felt it was as risky as others saw it, but if an opportunity came that I thought was really exciting and that had stretch, I'd grab it. So going from government to Westpac, everyone in government thought I was completely mad. Everyone in Westpac thought I was mad at the time as well. Going from, you know, doing with a health background, going into government, which I did, and then of course from banking into cruise shipping. There's not a logic to that unless you look underneath it. And there were great opportunities that came my way. In each occasion, I've taken the risk to change industry, often change cities, sometimes change countries, to grab those jobs, and in a sense use them to broaden my skill space. in each of them I've learned something new and I've got another string to my bow. So and I do recommend it. I say to people, you know, there are some people who love just doing the same thing from go to woe. I'm not one of those people. What I like is finding the next thing that challenges, stretches, and where I learn something. And in this job, I have to tell you, I've learnt a lot. I didn't know very much about engineering and ships and ports before I came into the job, but I know a lot about it now.
I'm sure you do. And Sherry, thanks very much for talking to Business Spectator.